Break up now, back. Very good morning to you. This is Newsroom, yes. Full team, Elvis, myself, Evan, and Kendall on the sports desk today. Nice to be with you once again. Of course, we'll be in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria this morning, where President Jacob Zuma's legal team will argue today on why the report on so-called state capture should not be released immediately. We're asking you the question, by the way, while we're conducting a poll over the last hour or so. Should the state capture report be released immediately? Elvis?
Yes, we got that poll running, Evan, and let's see if we can get it up and running there to show you exactly what we mean. There it is. Should the state capture report be released immediately? Hashtag SABC News. 90% of people saying... There's 3 people that are saying no. Now, those could be perhaps the people that is calling for the state capture report not
Not 3
released.
people, Elvis, it's 3%.
As a 3%.
3% of 246
But there's 3 people
votes.
that's going to court today.
That's correct.
So 3% of that.
246 of you have voted, and, well, 90% of people right now say, yes, we should release this report immediately. Of course, the President's legal team will argue shortly in the High Court as to what procedures were not followed in the run-up to this report being released, and therefore the President needs time to apply his mind to respond to questions in this report itself. We'll hear what happens in the High Court shortly, but there's a lot of other news happening as well today. Let's get an update from Elvis and Kendall.
As you heard from Yemen, President Jacob Zuma's legal team will argue in the High Court in Pretoria today why the Public Protector's report on the so-called state capture should not be released, plus the 2 other ministers. There's a high police contingent in the Pretoria city centre where EFF supporters will march in what they call a day of action. And the South African Weather Service says recovery from the drought will be slow, despite predictions of above-average rainfall over large parts of the country between now and February. Now, those are all your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports field. It seems like there's a difference between 1 and 6, Kendall.
Absolutely. It's a single Pirates goal. That's what the difference is, really. Good morning to the both of you. I know
I
Evan...
went black and white today just to show my love for Orlando Pirates.
The solidarity, even though the ship is sunk.
No, it's not sunk. We just got a puncture.
Just a puncture.
But those
Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
I think for the history, I don't know if ever Orlando Pirates have ever lost with this margin, and I can only speak to my chairman today and tomorrow and just put my resignation on, because in the end we are responsible for that, what's happened on the field, and I think we don't deserve to be on that jersey on Orlando Pirates.
Orlando Pirates coach Muhsin Etigral offers his resignation on live TV after his side gets humiliated 6-1 by SuperSport United on a rainy night in Mbombela.
Navas Aguero in the middle. It wouldn't go in for him, but it does for Gundogan.
Pep Guardiola's Manchester City stunned the mighty Barcelona, coming from behind to beat them 3-1 at the Etihad in their UEFA Champions League group stage encounter.
We're under no illusions that they're a good unit, especially here at home in home conditions.
The Proteas will be looking to make it 3 Test Series wins in a row when they get off the mark at the Wacker in Perth tomorrow morning. Now, all this and more, of course, we've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin, about 10:40 or so. But for now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. President Jacob Zuma's legal team will argue in the High Court in Pretoria today why the report on the so-called state capture should not be released. His counsel is expected to argue that he did not have enough time to respond to the questions posed by the former public protector Thuli Madonsela on his relationship with the Gupta family. Yesterday, the court ruled it would hear arguments from the Democratic Alliance, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the UDM and COPE. The parties are expected to argue that the release of the report is in the interests of South Africans. They also expected to march in Pretoria today against the alleged state capture together with Save South Africa. Meanwhile, Cooperative Governance Minister Des van Rooyen's application to stop the release of the report was struck from the roll yesterday. Similar application by the Mineral Resources Minister Mosebenzi Zwane is to be heard next week. Now, for an update on the court proceedings there, we now cross live to our reporter in Pretoria, Aldrin Sampear. Very good morning to you, Aldrin. Welcome. Please go through the expectations of what we can expect to happen today in court.
Well, yes, when the court case resumes this morning, around about 10 o'clock, we'll hear the amended application, or the application to amend the previous application by President Jacob Zuma in terms of interdicting the report. Remember that the relief sought by the president initially was to interdict the report and that the report not be released. Now what the president also wants is this court to instruct the office of the public protector and the public protector to give President Jacob Zuma enough time to what he calls to answer the long list of questions that were sent to him. And it has been stressed before that those questions were previously sent to President Jacob Zuma in March when the case was first laid, and then again in April because the president has indicated that he had not received the long list of questions. And then during October, he says it was in October that he first received the Section 79 notice, which indicated that he is an implicated party. And he said on the basis of that, he didn't have enough time within those 2 weeks to respond to the questions. He also wanted an opportunity to question the witnesses that Thuli Madonsela interviewed with regards to the state capture interview. And actually one of those witnesses is Feki Mento, the former ANC MP. Remember that she said that she was also offered a job by the Gupta family, a ministerial job by the Gupta family, and her legal representatives are in court. They will be party to this case. Remember that yesterday they came with an application. All the opposition parties have been granted access to this case. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what the ruling will come down to. But certainly, even after today's ruling, what still stands is Mosebenzi Zwane's application, which is quite similar to President Jacob Zuma's application, looking for a review of the state capture report. And Mosebenzi Zwane's case will only be heard next week. An opportunity was given to the council yesterday to have the matter heard, yesterday or simultaneously with this case, but they opted to wait until next week, Tuesday, which is the date that has been set down. And considering the interest in this case, the CBD in Pretoria has been on lockdown. The EFF yesterday, a few members arrived and they had a night vigil. And my colleague Dumaula has been part of the EFF supporters from earlier this morning, who are saying that they are expecting thousands more to be gathering, and they will be locking down the CBD. Dumala, what can you tell us from the point where you're at now?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Aldrin. And the mood here at Church Square is still very, very much lively. EFF supporters continue to pour in. In fact, many of them had spent the night here at overnight vigil. We spoke earlier to them, coming from different parts of Gauteng, many of them, but others coming out from different provinces in Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and surrounding provinces, saying that it was important for them to be here to ensure that they make their voices heard. Now, it's not only a march that centers around the state capture debate and the ruling that was passed at court, which they have yesterday, which they have lauded and which they have hailed as a victory and a step in the right direction for South Africa's constitutional democracy. But they say they are also here to raise awareness on the issue of the Fees Must Fall campaign. A lot of young people also, many of them in tertiary institutions, are here, and they have raised their voice and say that they are here because they're struggling to make ends meet in terms of paying for an education, which will mean in the long run they're excluded from the so-called formal economy in South Africa. So those two concurrent issues will be the issues that are at the top of the agenda for this march. With that, it's back to you in the studio.
We we've lost that signal there. Now we'll go to Tumoholi a little bit later to give us an update as to what's happening there. There's a number of our reporters in the field. There's also a high police contingent in the Pretoria CBD, the city centre, where the EFF supporters will march in what they call a day of action. Now the EFF is demanding that President Jacob Zuma steps down, the release of the Public Protector state capture report, and for the fees at institutions of higher learning to fall. Hundreds of EFF supporters, as you heard there from Tumoholi, who attended a night vigil in Church Square, are also slowly being joined by others. The Democratic Alliance and the Save South Africa are also expected to join the march a little bit later. Our reporter on the field, in the field there is Patricia Fasaghi. She's at the Save South Africa gathering. Let's go there live. Patricia, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis. It is a bit noisy out here, so if I don't hear you correctly, excuse me in advance. Of course, you can hear the official program has kicked off here. I'm sure you can hear the sounds of the national anthem that's echoing in the background. They are in the hall where the program is starting. Of course, earlier we kicked off with a press briefing where Save South Africa was addressing the media just to lay down the foundation, and of course just giving us the pointers that will be highlighted during today's program, and what exactly they came here for, and what is the purpose of the organization as a whole, and why they find it necessary to call upon all South Africans to unite here, together here, and of course, as they said today, they're here to cement what they call the People's Assembly against state capture. So the official program has kicked off. Earlier, a lot of South Africans, of course, are draped in beautiful South African T-shirts, flags, were singing and dancing just in front of the church. Some of them picketing just to gear up and gain momentum for the day that is expected, of course, to be a full program with a lot of activities that will take place here. Of course, we've got so many leaders that are gathered here today. We've seen the ANC Gauteng chairperson, Mr. Paul Mashatile, he is here. We've seen the COPE leader, Mr. Msiali Kota, he's also here. Leaders from, of course, trade unions, the SACP Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Solim Mapaila, that we interviewed earlier. Of course, we were about to speak to Mr. Sipho Pityana just to take us through some of his ideas that he came to cement here. But unfortunately, he had to leave us to go and join the official program. He was one of the keynote speakers on the program here. We've got CEOs from various big corporate companies. And of course, as I said, a lot of civil rights organizations are here. And just the ordinary men and women on the street. A lot of student organizations are also here. So Elvis, you can really imagine how vibrant this event is here, and the energy that is, of course, at the order of the day here. I'm sure you can hear the sounds that are echoing inside. Save South Africa, Save South Africa. And a lot of the people that are here said that is exactly why they're here today. They're here to unite in the efforts to save South Africa from what they have termed the continuous looting, and of course what they have claimed to be state capture that has continued. And they say they really highly disturbed about the events, the political events that have played out in the public domain over the past 2 years. So they're calling upon South Africans to unite and put a stop to this. Elvis?
Crossing to you live a little bit later just to find out exactly what came out of that gathering, because we also believe that they, as Save South Africa, will be joining the marches. But let's now go over to Eben to find out what's going on.
Yeah, it's a big day. Thank you very much, Elvis. Of course, we're running a poll. We're running a poll dealing directly with proceedings today. We're asking of you, our viewers, should the state capture report be released immediately? That's a question we're asking straight. Of course, that is exactly what will be the discussions by President Jacob Zuma's legal team today in court. It says 91% of the viewers, that's you, of 255 people that have voted, say yes, 3% say no, and 6% of you say, I don't care. Now, let's take some live pictures out of the courthouse. That's the North Gauteng High Court. These are live pictures. You can see discussions are currently underway as the court is, well, it's filling up very, very slowly. Of course, the council expected to argue that he didn't have enough time to respond to questions posed by former public protector Thuli Madonsela on his, well, alleged relationship with the Gupta family. This will form the meat and the drink of today's discussion in the courthouse. Of course, yesterday the court ruled it would hear arguments from the DA, EFF, UDM and COPE. Of course, they also expected to, well, march in the capital today against, well, what they call state capture. We got the report from Patricia a short while ago where she talks about the Save Our South Africa coalition that's organising the march. Of course, there are others. The EFF are running their Day of Action. They're running their Day of Action campaign. That is happening in the capital as well. I can tell you now that hundreds of EF supporters have gathered in the capital outside of the courthouse for their Day of Action protest. These are live pictures coming to you out of the court. It's day 2 of, well, what's now become the state capture hearings in the North Gauteng High Court. Now, Cooperative Governance Minister Des van Rooyen's application for an interdict to stop the release of the Public Protector's report into state capture was struck off the roll yesterday. Only President Jacob Zuma's application will be heard today at the High Court in Pretoria. The court heard that the Public Protector's report could be used to impeach the president. President Jacob Zuma is arguing that the report was finalised with procedural flaws as it didn't give him a fair opportunity to question witnesses.
President Jacob Zuma argues the report cannot be released. He believes his right to question the witness as per the Public Protectors Act has been infringed.
The facts concerning the process followed by Advocate Madonsela in preparing the report are essentially as set out in the affidavit of the President at paragraphs 13 to 27 of his founding affidavit, excluding paragraph 21, which amounts to comment on the facts. To the extent that those paragraphs annex and set out the correspondence between Advocate Madonsela and the President, they appear to be accurate and constitute the common cause facts on which the President's application falls to be decided. That is what the Public Protector has said.
One of those witnesses is former NCMP Feki Mento, who argues the President is trying to intimidate her. UDM and COPE argue that considering the Public Protector is not opposing President Zuma's application, in the absence of the political party's application, the report will never see the light of day.
To crown it all, the President, at a stage when he knew that Mr. van Rooyen had withdrawn, chose to answer to our intervention application. He could not have chosen to answer to our intervention application unless he knew, which he did, that our intervention application also covered the President. That answering affidavit where he says, whatever he says about the DA also applies to us, betrays any latter complaint that there is no intervention application in respect of the President.
Meanwhile, Minister Des van Rooyen was stopped in his tracks by the court when his counsel sought a postponement. The DA argued should either President Zuma or van Rooyen not be happy with the report, they can take it on a judicial review. As this matter was being heard, Mineral Resources Minister Msebenzi Zwane filed a separate application to hold the release of the report. It's apparent from the questions sent to him by Madonsela, he, amongst others, allegedly facilitated the Glencore sale to Gupta-owned mining company Together. Zwane's matter will be heard next week, Tuesday.
Yesterday, the High Court in Pretoria granted the Democratic Alliance, the EFF, UDM and COPE's application to intervene in the so-called state capture in the court case.
The applications of the Democratic Alliance, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the United Democratic Movement and the Congress of the People to intervene as parties to the application of Mr. D.D. van Rooyen, case number 84803 of 2016, are granted with costs, including the costs consequent upon the employment of two counsel where applicable. The application of Mr. D.D. van Rooyen, case number 84803 of 2016, is struck from the roll for lack of agency with costs, including the costs consequent upon the employment of two counsel where applicable. Those are the orders that we...
I agree. I agree.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the EFF members protested outside the court yesterday.
Far from a typical day at court, as a sea of red kept all eyes glued to the High Court. Their purpose? To amplify calls for the release of the so-called state capture report. The ruling party has also weighed in on the matter.
We respect the individuals who are implicated to follow any processes to try to be exonerated. But the issue of using courts to actually either delay or frustrate some of this process create a bit of a catch-22 for all of us, because you delay a report, it will ultimately come. What is the process? What is the problem if it comes now and it comes next week?
I think that the judges are asking the right questions. I think that the application for intervention will be granted.
We're optimistic. We trust that the courts will do the right thing. We're disappointed at these shenanigans by the president and his people.
We are very happy with the performance of the counsel for all the opposition parties. There's been an attempt on the part of the president and his squad to try and cut us apart.
Several high-profile public figures also converged at court.
Overall, I think that the court will come to the side of the people and say that we have a right as the public to read and to hear what the report of the public protector says about the state capture matter.
Political parties have expressed their satisfaction at court proceedings so far. They say they are now fired up for the march to the Union buildings on Wednesday. Dumalo Muhlaudi, SABC News, Pretoria.
Lots of discussion happening around South Africa right now as to proceedings before the High Court today. Let's take a look at what's been happening, what you guys are talking about with regards to the question we put out today. Of course, should the report be released immediately was our question. And this one from Guguleto, he says, release, simple. Sihle Mafa says, Newsroom, if they are transparent, the report must release. William Twane says, Newsroom, without terms and condition, the report should be released. Simple. And this one from Ikona Nato says, Newsroom, the report must be released immediately. Immediately. Yes, Abbas, it's pretty well, it's pretty clear cut.
Yes, yes. It must be realized as that the report must be released. Now, it's a big story. It's something that the legal eagles will argue today in court. But we're asking that question on the poll. And
yeah, on the poll. And it's
question.
A simple thing, really. You know, it's a legal matter.
Yes.
And in, before the courts, things are very simple. The test will be today whether the president's rights were infringed upon procedurally in the run-up to the release of the report. And if that is the case, then the president is within his rights to ask for this to be postponed in order for him to apply his mind in response.
There's also the question of whether or not he had enough time to go through the report and interview the witnesses that was put forward. Fakey Mentor was one of those. And yesterday she indicated that if she knew that the president was going to interview the witnesses, then she probably would have deposed a little bit differently in her deposition. Whereas the SG, Gwede Mantashe, indicated that maybe she didn't tell the truth in the deposition. So now there's a question as well, whether or not the witnesses, but she did clarify it afterwards by saying that she felt intimidated if the president would have interviewed her.
Wow.
Well,
intimidated by the president. If the the president have to act within the framework of the law, and he's within his rights to ask these questions and to question the witnesses as per the public protector law.
It's a big story. Everybody is involved in this. You could see it from our viewers. They're interested in this report, whether or not it should be released, whether it should be released or not. And of course, there's marches all over the place. We're going to cross to our reporters a little bit later just to bring us an update and to tell us where we are with this particular case. It's supposed to start at 10 o'clock even, and as we're monitoring it there, you can see people are filing in and out of the courtroom, and we'll keep the people updated, and you will be kept updated. But you can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Let us know, what do you think? Should the report be released or not released? To release or not to release, that's the question to you. Let us know on the Twitter handle as well as the Facebook page. Let's take a look at some social trends now with Eben.
Yeah, there's, of course, lots of discussion going on, as you can imagine. But let's have a look at where the state capture hashtag, where it's at yesterday. Of course, following yesterday's proceedings in which President Jacob Zuma, well, he's asking for an interdict, to interdict an application to prevent the state capture report to be released until he has time to apply his mind and review it. And then, of course, the hashtag doing the rounds this morning is Save South Africa. That's the hashtag, and of course, a march is expected to take place today, arranged by this activist group calling for senior leaders of the country to start making better decisions. They're also in support of Pravin Gordhan. The hashtag support Pravin Gordhan is the one that they ask you to interact with. Then, the FF are also marching in the capital today to demand the release of the state capture report and the resignation of Sean Abrahams. Of course, he's the head of the National Prosecuting Authority in South Africa. Then people are still talking about an alleged racist post relating to Diwali celebrations here in South Africa. Now, the man in the middle of it all is Davie Kriel. Here's Davie Kriel. This tweet from South African hero says, "It's time you pack your bags and leave our beautiful multicultural South Africa. No place for you, Boetie." Talking, of course, about Davie Kriel and his attack on the Diwali celebrations and Indians in general. The latest HIV/X vaccine clinical trials have started today. Yes, who would have thought 20 years ago that we'd ever get to this point? HIV vaccine. This tweet comes from Lorika Mazwinde, who says, couldn't the Department of Health come up with a less risky way of testing the HIV vaccine? Are they saying go have unprotected sex? Well, this is part of a long process, Lorika. That's how it is. But of course, this is the time of question everything. Today is End Impunity Day. Yes, that's a UN. UN is calling for the protection of journalists and for the freedom of information. Now, this is a nice tweet from NL in Afghanistan. It says, if we are not allowed to cover news, only rumors remain. Yes, that's the fact. Rumor mongering and mistrust rules if we're not allowed to cover the news as we're supposed to. Now, our picture of the day, let's take a look at it. This one comes from Chris Markatselis, and it's captioned, "Advertising fail." Look at this. Geluli's fail. Advert blunder. Bad workmanship. Rainstorm. After, of course, this is at Geluli's interchange where this massive billboard was just blown to bits. Blown to bits. Now, here is Michelle Benjamin's tweet of the day, and it says, "The saddest thing about the human race is how hate is eating away at our species. It's all the same race, Davie Kriel, the human race." In case you missed it, Davie Kriel, of course, had a blow-up at Diwali celebrations and Indian people in South Africa in general. That is what that tweet is all about. Of course, we're counting down to day 2 of the, the state capture hearings it's become now in the North Gauteng High Court. Don't go away. We'll get you some more updates shortly.
What is the price of ambition? Early mornings, late nights, or sacrificing the little things now for bigger things tomorrow? Ambitious people are all made of the same stuff. Big dreams, big dedication, and a big attitude. With an understanding that sometimes to get ahead in life, you need a helping hand from those a little bigger than you. For home, for business, for life. Macro, big on life.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Now, Labour Union Nahau has called on President Jacob Zuma to step down, saying his lack of leadership has become untenable. The call followed a Central Executive Committee meeting in Johannesburg yesterday. The African National Congress has meanwhile invited the Nelson Mandela Foundation to discuss any issues it may have with the ruling party. Now, this comes after the foundation issued a statement calling on South Africans to take action in expressing their dissatisfaction over the state of democracy in the country. Montashe highlighted this and other issues during a conversation with the media at Lutuli House.
The dropping of the charges against Pravin Gordhan, and welcome that. Further is the further dropping of charges against McBride and two of his colleagues. Welcome that. But we're making a point that we don't want to be critical of the NPA because it has a right to reconsider its decision to prosecute. We regard the allegation of state capture very seriously. I know that now it is everybody's narrative. We raised this issue ourselves in the first place, of the question of corporate capture, growing into state capture, risking of drifting into a mafia state. It is us who raised that issue. The unfortunate part of it is that it is now used as a narrative of instead of having people who actually theorize it in detail for society to learn from it. I can tell you that many of those comrades have been in this boardroom talking to us. But where it is described as suppression is when, for example, we have different views on particular matters.
Yeah, if you've just joined us, a very good morning to you. Just after 9:33 a.m. actually here on the Newsroom show. We're hoping for court proceedings to get underway shortly before 10 o'clock or around 10 o'clock this morning. We'll be looking at, the build-up and what's been happening yesterday. This is the picture in the court right now. Of course, President Jacob Zuma's legal team will argue in the High Court today why the release of the Public Protector's report on so-called state capture should not be released, and most of the discussion will be around procedures that were not followed in the build-up to the release of this report. So we've been asking you, our viewers, the question: should the state capture report be released immediately? And the general sentiment amongst the public is one of release the state capture report now, says Mulia Kamalong. And 90% of the 246 people that's voted on our poll, they say yes, it should be released. Mpilo says, Newsroom, the captured state is about to see or realize freedom. Kidnappers must be prosecuted, says Mpilo. Emmanuel says, Newsroom, report have to be released. And Mzikisi Zilandela says, we need the report ASAP, as soon as possible. Pilo comes back. He says, thanks to our well-oiled judiciary system, the state capture report will be home soon. That one from Mpilo Kumalo. Sipo says, Newsroom, it must be released so that we know where do we stand as a nation, and also we must know who are our leaders exactly, is what Sipo says, of course. The poll stands at 296 votes now, almost 300 votes. People say 90% of those 300 votes, that's around 270 people, are saying it should be released. There you have the numbers. 296 votes, mind you. 90% say yes, 4% no, 6% say 320. Well, this is the latest one. The votes keep coming. It stays at 90%, Elvis. That's, well, you know, that's kind of to the point.
And people really want to know what is happening with the state capture report. What is in that report that is so difficult to understand and to know where we're moving forward? Now, this all emanates from the Guptas, of course, which people are indicating has captured the state. This after last year, remember 2015, if you were watching and following the story, when the new minister was appointed, Des van Rooyen, for 4 days, and some call it weekend special at that point in time, because it was a very short period when he was appointed, and then we had, the president had to replace him then again with Minister Pravin Gordhan. 3 ministers in a row. That was changed, and that, of course, plunged the economy. And then the public then indicated that it seems like the state capture, because there was rumors that the Guptas preempted the appointment of Van Rooyen. And, of course, there were 7 meetings apparently that emanated now.
Whole host of scenarios, of course, Elvis, playing out. These are the live pictures coming out of the courthouse right now, as you can imagine. The one thing we have to make clear, though, Elvis, is despite all the emotion involved in this kind of case today, we have to be very clear that the president is well within his rights to go to court if he feels that he's been prejudiced. And in this case, the president believes that he's been prejudiced because he hasn't been able to interact with witnesses as per the law. And he hasn't had enough time to apply his mind in order to come up with the right conclusions. But that discussions will be very much in front of the court today, Elvis. Before this is what's happening inside the court. Let's go to Tumaole Motlaodi, who is outside the court, where lots are happening. Tumaole, I know it's very busy and very difficult out there, my friend, but just give us a quick idea what's happening.
Well, thank you very much, Evan. It's certainly very packed here at Church Square. We're at a different venue. Earlier, we were right at the center of the square where scores of EFF supporters have gathered. But I just came to the outside on the perimeter, the streets surrounding, and you can see there's a heavy police presence, both SAPS and Tshwane Metro police officials. This is as supporters of the EFF keep arriving, and of course they are converging on the center of the square, just opposite the court precinct. The mood there was very lively. However, Pretoria CBD is a virtual ghost town around the Church Square precinct, because the stores have closed. I think businesses are concerned about the number of people coming in. They've been advised that there's going to be a march. EFF's leadership has been very strong and very consistent to say that they won't tolerate any disruptions, and they won't allow people to vandalize any property. They are going to march because they believe that what they are marching for and the principles they're calling for are very critical. They're marching both for the outcome of the court process, which was ruling on the so-called state capture report, and they feel very vindicated with what the court ruled. But they're also marching for the fees must fall. They're saying that this is very important. We are expecting the march to be underway within an hour or so. Of course, the Tshwane Metro Police Department saying that the marchers have until at least 3 p.m. today before they have to reopen the routes, and after that they won't allow any disruptions to traffic. So as I speak to you now, one of the buses to the left of the screen is just pulling out. It has just dropped off a whole host of EFF supporters. The EFF supporters themselves are also very buoyant. Many of them spent the night sleeping here at the Church Square, just behind me, and they say that it was very important for them to be here. Many of them also taking time off work work to try and make their voices heard.
Tumaole, I saw that bus you pointed out to us there. He's got a Limpopo registration number on the back of the bus. That's how sharp I am. Tell me, as a lot of these people, have they been bussed into the capital from outside?
Well, certainly, Eben. In fact, many of the EFF supporters who have come through have been coming from neighboring provinces. The EFF leadership and many of the coordinators here saying that they called on their supporters to come from right across the country. Many of them will be coming from Limpopo, coming from Free State, coming from Mpumalanga, you know, the provinces surrounding Gauteng predominantly. But they're saying that this march is going to be a show of force.
Now, Tumahole, it's Elvis here. I just want to check with you. I see a number of the police contingents in the background there. How is security at this point in time, and are the roads blocked off in Pretoria?
That is very correct, Elvis. The roads in Pretoria are blocked off completely. This in anticipation of the numbers of people that are coming through. So this is why I made the analogy earlier that the CBD of Pretoria is virtually a ghost town, because also businesses are closed off. So the Tshwane Metro Police Department had made the announcement and made public service announcements to the public to be aware of disruptions. Now, as I talk to you now, a whole host of EFF members have just arrived, and they are in high spirits. They are singing. They are coming through from the north of the city, walking in towards the church square. As you can see, many of them carrying posters, and many of them also quite young. And of course, the march is all about fees must fall, and also about the state capture. So you can see they are in high spirits. They have come out in their numbers, but the EFF was saying that they're going to be disciplined and they won't be causing any disruptions beyond the march itself.
Tumole, before I let you go, this all forms part of the EFF so-called Day of Action. Now, this is, of course, the state capture report, but also fees must fall. What are the other points that they are unhappy about?
Well, definitely one of the other things that they are unhappy about, especially when we talk about the fees must fall issue, is the fact that they feel that government is abdicating on its responsibility, and it's government, it's incumbent on government to find the money to support the students, because they feel that the student movement and the student fee must fall campaign is a legitimate campaign, and they've all long been saying that the Freedom Charter in itself would make provisions to allow the state to provide for free education. These are some of the key issues that are on the agenda. These are the two issues that are driving the march, and they're saying that they're bringing it to the doorstep of the capital of the city to make sure that government hears them.
Tumole, just turn around and ask them what they think there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll speak to some of the supporters, Baba. Please let us know why it was important for you to come to the march today.
Let these guys explain.
All right.
Batho ba ka moka ra gopela ka moka go bolela ka speed ka bolela ka setlatlhapi Zuma must fall ka baka bana ba rena ba sokola ba tsene ba ya dikoloni fees must fall Zuma must out ke ma fighter ka moka Zuma ana net no ona ana net no le corruption that's all bona o tjhe starta o tjhe ma police ba ka Zuma against Zuma e o rane ma competitors one fees must fall.
Okay, and that wena o tletse eng for march?
Yeah.
Mo matšhe mo re tletse ditokelo tsa rena ka gore rena zanke nke re dumello gore re lwele di-right tsa rena ge re bolela di-right tsa rena re a thuntshwa se se nkutlwang botlhoko Moko Mandela o ile a ragela dinto tsa di-RDP mahala ba di rekisitse there's nobody one a ileng a dinto tsa rena di a rekisiwa ge re ra bolela le gona re a thuntšiwa ga re ne baemeledi le Zuma le ene wa geleng kantlatšhile gologolo o wisitse party ne re rata ANC ya ga bo rena e re ntshitseng ka gare ga gole gore bitswa ka furupopotšane ba re bethwa.
Thank you, Tate. So these are some of the supporters saying that they basically reiterating the fact that they're marching for fees must fall, saying that they can't can't afford to send their children to school, so it's important to be here. But then also they are talking to the issue that as the EFF, they are feeling that the judgment that was passed down here by the Pretoria High Court certainly points to the fact that, as you heard, they're saying Zuma must fall. Zuma must fall. They are saying that, of course, the government led by President Jacob Zuma, they feel is not good for the country. This is according to them. And they also saying that they are struggling. And one of the supporters was even alluding to the EFF's history, that the leaders and the founders of the EFF were former ANC Youth League leaders, Julius Malema, after having been established, after being expelled, setting up the EFF. And they were saying that since then they felt that, that's why they're out here to march. It's back to you, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Tumaole. Doing great work there in very difficult conditions. Thanks for that contribution. That's our man on the spot. Tumaole Motlaodi. If you don't know how to pronounce his name, that is what it is. Now, the tweets, they keep coming thick and fast, Elvis. People are telling us that, well, this report will bring the misunderstanding because no one knows its content. Maybe its in favor of Mr. President. Fiso, that's what it's all about, my friend. Nobody knows.
Yeah, this one is still from Fiso, says that the state report, or SIPO rather, the state report must be out. So for all of us to be free, including our president and others, then will we know where to focus? Well, that's a thing that will be discussed in court today, and we'll find out whether or not that report will be released.
Bob has a view that let the people judge for themselves. Release the state capture report. Yes, Bob, but we cannot prejudice the rights of the president. And that is what's before the court today.
Hashtag General says it must be released now. No questions asked.
Of course, we're running that poll, so keep your comments coming on the poll. Wisani Leibniz says, Newsroom, the president should start to do business in daylight. Release the report. State capture is what Wisani is talking about. Well,
what does that suggest? That there's a dark tunnel and there must be business in daylight? Well, Wisani, let us know a little bit more about your statement there to release the report. These are some of the comments coming through. You can also do so. Let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Participate in the poll. Let us know where you stand. Where does the poll stand right now? Let's find out if we can have the poll up and running to see what numbers have we got there, Yeben.
Should the state capture report be released now? We've got 320 votes. Do we have more? I think we might even have more votes, but it's quite clear. There we are, 339 votes. Thank you for voting. Keep voting, South Africa. We'd like to know, your views on the show. Your views is what it's all about. Should the state capture report be released immediately? That's the thing. Immediately is the question that we're asking. And Elvis, 90% say no. I'm a bit worried that 6% say I don't care.
90% yes, 4% no, 6% don't care. That is a disturbing trend because you should care if you're South African, a true patriotic South African. You should care about what's going on in the country, and this is a very important one today. Up in the courts in the North Gauteng High Court, that's where it's happening. We're going to cross there live at 10 o'clock as soon as the judge entered the chambers.
Let's just take, there's some live pictures coming in from the courthouse. Now, as you can see, matters are slowly starting to pick up. It's now 9:47 a.m. We expect the court to go live at around 10 a.m. this morning. So wire-to-wire coverage this morning on the Newsroom show. You can see in the background, of course, the media is there. The EFF supporters on the left. You can see shortly you'll start seeing security, police and the like moving into the court to secure the courtroom. Legal counsel are in, well, quite frank discussions at the moment. Of course, the pressure this morning will be on the lady in picture that you see right there. Her name, of course, is Althea Platt, advocate Althea Platt, if you've never heard of her. And she's expected to argue that the president did not have sufficient time to respond to questions posed by former public protector Thuli Madonsela. Also, the president is prejudiced because the law states that he can, or that he's allowed to, question witnesses, and he has not been able to do so. There you have Advocate Dali Mpofu, of course, on behalf of the others in the case, talking to Advocate Althea Platt about, well, the proceedings ahead this morning. A lot of pressure on the senior counsel that you see in the picture right now. Of course, this matter has got, well, everyone in South Africa talking, Elvis. On top of that, there are marches being held all around the capital, which certainly ups the ante a little bit with regards to what is happening inside this courthouse today.
You also heard from Patricia Fasahi, which is at the Save South Africa gathering, and they will be joining the marches a little bit later after their gathering there, and we'll also find out what is happening there. But yesterday, some fireworks in court. We heard that the Cooperative Governance Minister, Des van Rooyen's application for that interdict to stop the release of the Public Protector's report into state capture, that one has been struck off the roll. Now, remember that the minister did make the first application and then, of course, pulled it back, and now again he's applied to have that report stopped and struck. And
it's been struck off the roll with costs, has it?
Yes, with cost, yes.
With costs, so that is at the Cooperative Governance Minister.
So at this point in time, only Jacob Zuma, the president's application, will be heard today.
Yes, that is what Advocate Althea Platt, in picture in front of you, will be putting to the judges in this case. Of course, a full bench, Davi Furi, Judge Moapelo and Dunstan Mlambo. Well, they've been hearing this case since the start of it yesterday. They will continue to do so today. These are the live pictures in the court, counting down. It's 10 to 10 right now, 9:50 a.m. Shortly, yes, very shortly, matters will be getting underway in the court. But before we get there, the EFF have been very vocal in the shape of the Economic Freedom Fighters leader, Julius Malema. Now, he's called on his party members to come out in their numbers in the capital today. Malema has called on parents not to let their children fight their battles and to join their struggles.
The NPA that visits political office, we don't need it, because that signifies the rot which we are experiencing in this country. So we want as well free education. You know, these people who are refusing you free education is because they don't want you to be better than the child of a white person. You must look at the lawyer we are having inside here, called Advocate Mugai Tobi. He's a black advocate, and he's excellent. Even senior counsels don't go anywhere close to him. Why? It is because of education. Education will demonstrate black excellence. And because they know that you've got potential to be better than them, they suppress you through making education expensive. The demands for free education is not an unreasonable demand. It's a genuine demand, and we want the South African government to adhere to it, because we in the EFF believe that the students must be supported and they must be given free education. Ourselves as parents, we must not complain about the children who are protesting. They do that on behalf of parents. Because it's not those kids who are paying their fees, it's parents who are paying. So children are fighting for their parents. Now we have called in the parents tomorrow to come and fight for themselves. They must stop being cowards and sending their children to go and fight for them. Parents must come and occupy the streets of Pretoria and demand free education in our lifetime, quality education which will liberate a black child. So we are here tomorrow in our thousands.
EFF have arrived in the capital. They are there. You saw the pictures, live pictures coming in, reports from Tumaole Mutlaudi saying that, well, thousands expected, bust in from all the provinces around Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Limpopo. We saw buses coming out of Limpopo with EFF members. Now, the DA, well, they're holding a separate march in the CBD in Pretoria, also against state capture. Here's some live pictures. They've marched to the Magistrates Court, where they plan to meet up with other political parties and civil society movements. Now, Nhlanhla Patlani is at the march. Nhlanhla, good morning to you. Just give us a quick overview. What's happening?
Good day to you in studio. Talking to you from Pretoria here, where the DA has gathered. A number of people, hundreds of DA members started gathering earlier on after we immediately talked with you. Now they are being addressed by their leaders. I move out of the show just to look at hundreds of them. We can also see on the other street the the EFF members also coming in to come in and join the course of today. We know that the DA is also emphasizing one thing, that this is not only about what transpired Monday. It's not only about Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan. It's actually about the Constitution. So DA leader keeps on emphasizing that to the people, that the country is in crisis, and they are calling for President Jacob Zuma to step down as the President of the Republic. He's now talking to the members of the DA, telling them about the cause of the day, telling them why they are here, telling them the reason why they are here. On the other side, the EFF members are also coming in to join the march to come here to the Pretoria Magistrate Court. It's back to you in studio.
Yeah, let's just stay on those live pictures while we're in studio. As you can see, a little bit of organised chaos in the capital right now. A little bit of organised chaos, as you can see, a strikingly large police presence in the capital right now. As you saw there, that's on the one side of the city. You've got the DA marching and the EFF on the other side. But let's take a look at your tweets, your views. What are people tweeting us here? Newsroom from Lawrence Sefolo. He says, state capture report should not be released immediately. The president should also be afforded an opportunity to respond. Yes, Lawrence, we're all equal in front of the law. The president's rights have to be respected. Tyron Ferndale says, Newsroom, we need to know. We agree with you. Everyone needs to know. If you don't have something to hide, let them release the report immediately. Just saying. Yes, but in front of the law, you have rights. Elvis Motsabi is sharing the views of everybody, pretty much.
He says also, and that's why we have 90% in our poll. He says, release the state report immediately. Mobile says, we want to know what is happening in our country, please. Release it. Well, that's Mobile. Muli says the office of the presidency have no right to block a Chapter 9 institution from delivering on its constitutional mandate. Well, the president is not really stopping the institution from delivering. It's the court process.
You know, Elvis, this reminds me of a time long ago, 30 years ago, when we used to go to schools and there were no pictures allowed of Nelson Mandela to be published and the like. And we used to go do functions at schools to try and ask the children to interact with the struggle at that time. And funny story, I always used to ask, what was Mandela's first name? And, you know, quite often at these schools, the children would respond, release, release, because Release Mandela was the slogan, at the time.
At the time, yes.
Well,
that is where we stand right now with our well, we were just going to tell you about the poll that has been captured. Well, we'll see if we can get it back.
It's all happening in the capital. But these live pictures are the DA
coming through from the DA march, right? There you can see it. The DA is gathering in the capital. They are in front of, I think there's a loud hailer and also a stage where the DA leader is addressing the crowd there, as you can see. And of course, they'll be also marching towards the High Court a little bit later. There's the report. It has been released. The poll has been released. We can see it now. Loud and clear, Eben. 90% of you are saying yes of 339 votes. 22 hours left to vote. 4% of you are saying no. 6% of you says, I don't care. Well, the poll has been released, and we will also take a look at the court case that asking for the release of the report or not. So to release or not to release, that is the question.
That's the question. You saw live pictures of the DA. These are the live pictures in the courthouse. In the courthouse right now, we saw a little bit of action. Of course, the gallery is packed at the back there. You see the whole host of journalists, political figures, and the like. They're all in there. Well, some say they'd be baying for blood in the courthouse today. Of course, full bench, Judge Mlambo, Moyapelo, and Fourie are the judges who are presiding over this matter. Well, it's now 9:58 a.m. We expect them to start shortly, somewhere around 10 o'clock. Let's take a short break while we've got a little bit of time. Hopefully when we come back, we'll be able to go straight in the courthouse for today's proceedings.
information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates at every hour. Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Hello again, welcome back. If you've just joined us, the Newsroom team, we are here. We are standing by to go to the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, of course, this morning. Now, President Jacob Zuma's legal team, well, they're expected to argue today on why the report on so-called state capture should not be released. Elvis, these are live pictures coming out of the courthouse right now.
There you can see the court filling up here, but yes, and we're going to go there live shortly as soon as the judge enters the fray. And as you can see, the lawyers are getting ready. Also, the media is already sitting by as well to cover this story.
Yes, this is where we're at. Of course, we've been asking you the question on a poll: should the state capture report be released immediately? That's what we've been asking you. These are live pictures coming outside the courthouse. The DA is, I don't know, what do you call that? Having a covered ceremony outside in the street there. But Kendall, this has been the response so far. Are you surprised by this?
Not at all. I mean, it's been in the news for some time now. It's been widely reported that we have 90% of our viewers saying that yes, it should be released immediately, and 6% saying I don't care. And once again, it actually it's quite interesting that 6% say they don't care, while 4% are saying absolutely no, it shouldn't be released. Very interesting.
Well, Kendall, thank you very much. We've got a sensational development coming through right now. In my ear, I've just been informed that the president, yes, President Jacob Zuma, has just withdrawn his application completely. This is a developing story. We'll try and keep you updated as to how this develops. So, Elvis, what does this mean?
What does this mean? We'll need to find somebody that can relay that to us, Eben, from a technical and legal perspective. What does it actually mean? Aldrin Sapir will be standing by shortly to give us that. Let's see if we can go there to Aldrin. Aldrin, not now.
No, he's not ready yet.
See if we can connect him as yet.
He's not ready yet.
As soon as we connect with him.
As you can understand, this is a sensational development. Let's take some live pictures out of the Capitol. This is in the courthouse. Of course, a little bit of confusion must be reigning there now. You can see counsel on the phones and the like. There's a little bit of unease in the gallery right now. The president has just withdrawn his application to the court. Also, that's what we've got as a developing story. Breaking news. We'll put that up right now. Do we have any live pictures from outside the court? What is happening with regards to the marches of both the DA and the EFF?
As you can see also now, the lawyers representing all the parties is not in court. They're probably in chambers with the judge to finalize this, or the judges. And as you can see, there's some live pictures coming from outside with the DA march and also the other marches. We'll all try and cover that. But this is breaking news here on Newsroom. You heard it first on the Newsroom. President Jacob Zuma has withdrawn his application. What does it mean? That is the big question. We'll see if we can get hold of our reporter.
The interesting thing as well would be whether the other applicants would be withdrawing theirs or not as well, which I suppose, they probably would be.
Well, the other minister, Zwane, this case will only be heard on Wednesday, so we probably have to still hear what's going to happen there. But now, what is breaking right now is that the president has withdrawn his application.
This, Elvis, is a sensational and very significant development this morning. We are just being informed via our communication system that President Jacob Zuma has just withdrawn his application. This application to stop the release of the state capture report. The president has just withdrawn the application. That is the initial report that we have. Behind the scenes, we're working feverishly to try and get more details. Shortly, we'll go to Aldrin Sampier. Okay, Aldrin, you are there. Good morning to you once again. Just give us an overview. Sensational developments. What is happening?
Well, yes, indeed, Eben. We've just received word from various sources indicating that President Jacob Zuma will be withdrawing the state capture application. Remember that he brought an application to the court seeking for the report or the state capture report not to be released on the basis that he feels that the public protector didn't follow the proper procedure. So now we'll wait and see exactly when the counsel of the president will be standing up in court and withdrawing that application, whether they will be giving reasons why they have decided to withdraw this application.
Aldrin, what does this mean and what does this say about the president right now?
Well, what this definitely means, it means that the state capture report, there could be an application now. The EFF has already indicated that they will be bringing an application to have the report released immediately. Remember, as per the October 14th order by the same court, it was asked that the report be kept under lock and key, and that has been the case since Busisiwe Mkhwebane took over and Thuli Madonsela's term came to an end. Now the EFF saying that they will push to have the report released immediately, and I guess that will be the push from all the opposition parties as well, including the DA. President Jacob Zuma will have to wait and see. We probably will receive a statement from the president's office with regard to reasons why he has decided to withdraw the application with regards to interdicting the release of the public protector's report. Another question is whether the report indeed will be released. The question here is that we know that Msebenzi Zwane, the Minister of Mineral Resources, has also made a similar application. And remember that his application will only be heard on Tuesday. And he has served the Office of the Public Protector with papers saying that he's interdicting the release of the report. He's also asking for a review of the report and wants the report not to be released.
Well, that's shocking news. Now, Aldrin, when we look forward, do we then have to probably wait for Msebenzi Zwane, Minister Zwane's case to be heard before the report will then be released?
Elvis, can you just quickly repeat that question?
Will we have to wait and see whether or not Minister Zwane's application will be heard before the release of the report then?
No, what we know for sure now is that yesterday Msebenzi Zwane's counsel was in court and they indicated that they will wait up until Tuesday. That's the date that has been set down for Msebenzi Zwane's application to be heard. We haven't had any indication as yet whether he is also withdrawing his application for to have this report be kept under lock and key up until he feels that he's been afforded a proper opportunity to respond to some of the questions and the allegations made in the state capture report. What we don't know for certain is whether Msebenzi Zwane is implicated in the state capture report. Remember that with Van Rooyen, it was Thuli Madonsela who indicated on Friday, the last day in office, through her counsel, that there are no findings against Des Van Rooyen. But of course, Des Van Rooyen, after seeing the Sunday Times report, felt that there could be that the report could be implicating him or the report could be mentioning him.
Aldrin, it's Eben again. This is a massive surprise. I'm sure you're quite surprised at the withdrawal. I think the whole of the media fraternity is quite surprised at this withdrawal at this very late stage. The crux of the matter is that the president had a very good chance of getting a positive verdict today because procedurally there were some issues, weren't there?
Well, definitely. If you look at, for instance, the push from the president, you first had that application that was brought just after Thuli Madonsela's term came to an end. That court case was supposed to have been heard, I think, the Tuesday after Thuli Madonsela, after the last day of Thuli Madonsela's time in office. That case wasn't heard. It was then consolidated. The president then made it. Then it was decided that the matter will be heard on the 1st of November. The president then indicated that after hearing that the report of the public protector is a final report, he then indicated that he will be amending his application in court. He wants the court to be clear that the report is unlawful because procedurally he feels that the public protector has failed to uphold Section 7(9) of the Public Protectors Act, which allows him an opportunity to cross-examine or to question witnesses which the public protector have used or interviewed during her investigation. The public protector also indicated to President Jacob Zuma during that last week in the office, saying that she looks forward, quote unquote, to the questions that the president wants to pose to the witnesses, and that will be done through her. It should be written questions. And of course, we had Feki Mentor, the ANC MP, who also applied to be part of this case, who said that that amounts to intimidation to have President Jacob Zuma and his legal team cross-examining them.
Now, Eldrin, as we speak, I can look at the pictures that's coming live through from Pretoria. There's only some of the legal representatives right there now, and some are in the, I gather, in the chambers with the judge. And it looks like there's some confusion there. What can you tell us about that?
Can you just quickly repeat that, Albert?
It looks as if there's some confusion in the courtroom right now because we're seeing live pictures coming through. Some people, some of the legal teams who are on their phones calling to find out what's going on. There were some of the legal representatives that seems to be as if they were in the judge's chambers. Is that what's currently happening?
Well, I guess what's probably happening now, considering that we've received, considering that we've received now this information through the sources and various media houses, of course, now breaking this news, is that the lawyers are now receiving calls from their clients and so forth and determining what the way forward will be. And quite important, I was looking at the social media page or the Twitter timeline of the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, Julius Malema, who said in that tweet that we'll now be pushing to have this report released immediately. And I guess that's the push now at the moment. The other issue is that you have the Public Protector's Office. Their counsel is represented here. We haven't heard from the Public Protectors yet. If indeed President Jacob Zuma, or immediately after President Jacob Zuma withdraws the application, we'll have to wait and see whether the Public Protector, Mkhwebane, will be amenable to this application by the EFF to have the report released immediately. We could also find a situation where you have Msebenzi Zwane's counsel rushing to court to try and prevent the release of the report, because remember that their application is based on not releasing the report, and the arguments are the same as President Jacob Zuma's arguments in terms of procedurally. Msebenzi Zwane feels that he wasn't afforded enough time to respond to some of the allegations that have been made in the investigation of the Public Protector. She sent a Section 79 notice to Zwane indicating that, for instance, there are allegations that he facilitated the Waterkloof Air Force Base landing of the Gupta family. Remember, there was a huge one. There was also a case that the Public Protector, Thuli Madonsela, the previous Public Protector, investigated. There's also the case around facilitating the acquisition of Glencore by Tegeta, which is a Gupta-owned mining company. It's alleged that Msebenzi Zwane flew all the way to Switzerland to help facilitate that acquisition of Glencore mine. So those are the issues as they stand. We'll have to wait and see what happens now. Quite importantly will be whether this report will be released today. I guess that's the next step for this case.
Now, seeing that we are still waiting for the judge to come through and the legal representation, this case will still continue today then?
Well, definitely, though, the case will continue, considering that now the EFF or the opposition parties, I guess, they will all agree to bring a new application, and that new application will be to have the report released immediately. Obviously, President Jacob Zuma's counsel will be the first counsel to speak. They'll stand up because they are the people who brought the initial application to have the report sealed, to have the report concealed and not be released based on arguments around procedural fairness and so forth and so forth. And then they will then indicate what exactly they've decided on. And I guess the judges have already been told in chambers that this is the decision that the president has taken, that he will not be going forward with this case.
Well, Eldrin, it seems like we see now some of the legal representatives coming back into the courtroom there, and they're filling up. I think they're just waiting for the judge, Eben, to come through as well to continue with the case, as Eldrin just indicated.
Yeah, Alvis, an absolutely sensational development this morning. Let's take a look at the live pictures outside This is outside pictures coming to you now live from the capital, Pretoria. There, Paul Kruger's statue is standing facing the other way. A little bit of irony there today in the capital. As you can see, a sea of red around Church Square, where, well, this forms part, of course, of the EFF's Day of Action. Yes, Elvis, they are against, well, they're showing support for fees must fall, they're defending the democracy, they're against the state capture report, and is there anything that I've missed?
Well, also that the president must fall today, right?
Yes.
And of course the state capture report, as we just heard, breaking news right now on your screen. The president has withdrawn his application to interdict the state capture report. We'll keep you updated on the developments there. But there you can see the live pictures coming through from Church Square there with the EFF supporters. Also, as you know, the DA. Well, I don't know, Eben, if these marches will still continue, seeing now that the president has withdrawn his application.
Yeah, I think they will, Elvis, as you see now the picture moving around to the stage. It's the EFF march in particular has got more to do with the other scenarios. They've got more to do with fees must fall and their day of action and the like. Of course, there you see Godrich Gardy at the back as they're geeing up this crowd in the capital. The EFF, their march is a more general march that deals with taking action against what they call unethical behavior in general in South African politics. Godrich Gardy on stage, Elvis, doing an impression. Here we see the DA march looks like, well, it looks like they're disbanding, is it?
Well, it looks like they're disbanding, and it looks like there's some commotion there happening. We can't really see exactly what is going on, but there's some movement there. And then, of course, what will happen now with the Save South Africa? What will happen with their particular march? And we see Nhlanhla Kahlani. Let's see if Nhlanhla, are you there? Can you hear me? Nhlanhla?
The mic is on.
Yes, Nhlanhla, I see you have a guest with you.
With us is DA President, Mr. Mmusi Maimane. Mr. Mmusi Maimane, the President has withdrawn his application. Your views on that?
Look, it's about time. He must stop wasting taxpayers' money. And I'm glad he has. As the original applicant, we've written to the public protector to say, please, can we get that report as a matter of urgency? And then subsequent to that, we want to proceed in making sure that those who are responsible are held accountable. We cannot be living in a country where the resources of the people are being captured for the benefit of a few. Zuma must in fact resign, and the ANC, in this instance, we are going to give them an opportunity in Parliament to take the appropriate steps that they need to take.
There you heard from the DA President, Mr. Mmusi Maimane, talking to us, telling us about the reason why they are here. They still remain absolute that they want the President to step down. It's back to you in studio.
Nhlanhla, will they still be marching today? Will they continue with their march? Well, it looks like we've lost that link once again with Nhlanhla. Very noisy there, so I don't think they can actually hear us as we speak to them live in the CBD there. As you can see, they're filing out. It looks like live pictures from the court is coming through, and look like all the legal representatives have returned, Eben.
Yeah, they are. Let's go to Julius Malema. There we go, outside the courthouse.
Let me take this opportunity to welcome the leaders of the EFF, the Deputy President, Secretary General, the DSG, members of the Central Command Team, and the province, regions, all councillors of the EFF, our branches and supporters. Fellow fighters, we are here to demand the resignation of Jacob Zuma. We are here to demand the resignation of Sean Abrams. We are here to demand free education in our lifetime. Therefore, you are not at the wrong place. We are going to be here until we get a proper signal. If Zuma doesn't hear us today, we are not going anywhere. We are here to defend a democratic state. So all of us, we must be proud that we are making history. I want to tell you, we have nothing to do with white CEOs who are calling for Save South Africa and all those things were not part of that mess. When we are done with Zuma, we are going for white CEOs who are refusing with our economy. They must never think we are friends. We will never be friends with Maria Ramos from ABSA. We will never be friends.
Julius Malema in full voice outside the High Court. Unfortunately, there are more important matters happening inside of the courthouse right now. Let's go to Judge Mlambo to put us in the picture as to how matters will proceed in the North Gauteng High Court.
Yes, my Lord. My Lord, my instructions are to withdraw the application and to tender costs. My instructions are further not to oppose any costs on the scale, the scale of the costs, and we abide the decision of this Honourable Court in relation to those costs.
When you talk scale, can you just clarify what you mean?
The punitiveness of the cost order. We are not opposing that.
You're not opposing that?
Yeah, we have no instructions to oppose that order.
Well, let's take 2 steps back. Your instructions are to withdraw the application in its entirety. Your instructions are to tender costs and to... Yeah.
My instructions are, I have no instructions to argue on costs.
To argue costs, okay.
Yes.
But you tender in cost in line with your withdrawal?
In light of the withdrawal, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Advocate Clark. Sorry, just before you sit.
Just to recap, is there a formal application for punitive costs before us?
There isn't a formal that I know of. I know they've mentioned it in a reply. In the replying affidavits, they've mentioned it, but that I haven't seen any notice of motion requiring.
And before you sit down, this matter was brought by the President in his position as President of the Republic of South Africa.
That's correct.
Thank you very much, Mr.
My Lords, I have a very brief submission on behalf of the Public Protector on the issue of costs. It's clear that the Public Protector is entitled to be included in the tender of costs up to the date on which the Public Protector withdrew her notice to oppose and filed a notice to abide. And I just wish to submit that it would be appropriate in this matter that the Public Protector also be granted its costs in respect of the events subsequent to the filing of a notice to abide. The Public Protector came to court in order to assist the court. It filed affidavits and heads of argument in order to assist the court, and it would not have had to have done so unless the application was brought. And I submit that it would be appropriate for the Public Protector to be included in the whole of the costs order, as well as that up until the date on which she withdrew her opposition.
Thank you very much. For the DA?
May it please the Court. My Lords, as far as the DA's position is concerned, Grade 2 of the notice of motion in the application for intervention is for an order directing the Public Protector to publish the final and signed report into the complaint laid by the Democratic Alliance on 18 March 2016. We move for such an order on the basis that there is no opposition. My Lords, on the issue of costs, our submission is merely the following, and that is that the entire backdrop of this matter relates to the use of state resources for private interests.
I see flash photography. Can I ask anyone who's inclined to do that and who's doing that to stop it, please? Thank you very much. Sorry, Advocate Labuskashi.
As the Court pleases. My Lords, just a few submissions on the issue of costs. The topic of the surrender of control of state resources to private interests has been a recurring topic in the recent political discourse, and it forms the backdrop of the complaint that the DA laid. The submission is made even in this matter that the President has brought this application in his role as President but he asserts a personal right. And in fact, if I could just read from his affidavit, the supplementary, his position, it's at paragraph 27, page 58, he says, therefore, as it's in the application for postponement and amendment. Yes. That supplementary affidavit that the President sought to adduce. He says there, as much as public interest requires that the report be finalized and made public, this cannot outweigh my right to enforce a constitutional right to just administrative action. Our submission is that it is clear that the President is asserting a personal interest and a personal right and is using the office of the President to do so and is using the State Attorney to advance that interest. And to withdraw the application without any consequence for the President personally, we submit, would not be appropriate. And our submission before the court is merely that the state coffers should not again be mulcted for private interests. And for that reason, the President should pay his own costs. And he should pay the costs of the State Attorney as well and his counsel from his own resources, my Lord. And that's the only submission. The issue of the scale of those costs we leave to the court.
Mr. Ramscaffery, in the prayers on which you came to court, is there a prayer for the kind of remedy you are now asking for?
Lord, what we are saying in our opposition is that the application constitutes an abuse, and that is the basis on which the court would grant a punitive cost order. My Lords, as far as the final paragraph of our application to intervene is concerned, paragraph 28, we move that the DA says that it requests that the application be dismissed with costs to be paid personally by the Minister, and we submit that the same arguments apply as far as the President is concerned. There are certain personal interests, and the abuse which we submit forms the backdrop of the application as a basis on which the court should show its disdain for the use of state resources for private interests. We leave that issue and the scale in the court's hands for decision, and those are our submissions. We move for the order for the report of the Public Protector to be released forthwith, as the court pleases.
I follow your argument about the President also asserting a personal right. The whole backdrop of this matter, as you say, the alleged surrender of state resources and the alleged abdication of his responsibility relating to the appointment of ministers, all those talk to his position as president of the country, isn't it?
That is so.
What then, if that's the whole backdrop of the matter, would be the basis for ordering him to pay these costs personally?
My Lords, we've indicated that our submission is that because the President has used his official office to assert a private right and has used state resources to do so, the court should see through that aspect and treat him as the individual who seeks to assert his personal rights, and he should bear those costs and the state should not. As the court
Thank you very much, Advocate Labuskaghni.
As a court please, for the first intervening party.
Is that for the EFF?
For the EFF. Lord, before we accept what the President has offered or has tendered, and we want to draw the court's attention firstly to the fact that there is a counter application by the intervening parties, and their lordships will find that in bundle 1 to the main application, in which the last page was 33, and your lordships will find that order number 3 that is sought from this court is one that orders the first respondent, which is the President, to publish the report on the 14th of October.
What page are you on?
On page 2 of the notice of motion.
And is that the President's notice of motion?
In our notice of motion, my Lord, in the counter application.
What's the index page?
The index page, your Lordships will find that our notice of motion in the notice of intervention and counter application is page 2.
There could be a problem of
page 91, probably,
of pagination, which is detaining us here.
But it is the counter application, Lord, as we have been talking about.
Well, we have an index here, and we are talking about index pages. You're talking probably about
there is an index to first, second, and third intervening parties' application to intervene.
Is that what we're talking about? So it's not the main application.
One.
The intervening parties' applications.
Yes. Yes, my Lord.
Okay, mental.
And your Lordships will find.
Just bear with us. Application for postponement. Intervening party. Have you found it, JP?
This is. You say you're on page 2 of your index, isn't it?
Yes, my Lord.
Okay, which prayer are you talking about there?
We're talking about the prayer 3, in which we ask this Honorable Court to order the first respondent to publish the report.
Right.
The dates will obviously change because of where we are.
Yes.
And we need to disclose to this court that there is another process where we had asked that the date should not be later than the 8th of November because we had anticipated that we might probably be dealing with issues. But what is important in terms of that order and in terms of the fact that it is not being opposed is the fact that we are asking the release of the report forthwith, in which event we put a full stop there and you are asking for the grant of this court's honorable order in terms of paragraph 3 as amended.
And the amendment is forthwith.
And the amendment is forthwith, yes. The date should be removed from the order that will be asked for by first intervening part. So, my Lord, that is the first order of business. And this is so because this application is not being opposed. And there's a tender on the question of course. We had asked in paragraph 4 of that notice of motion that in the event of opposition, the order of course should be on an attaining client scale. So we are not asking for anything that was not contemplated in the notice of motion. But further than that, and I will take your Lordships to where we in the affidavit deal with the question of course, but where it talks to the question of scale, the President should have been aware that we are asking for costs on the higher scale. And there is no opposition. There's been no opposition, in fact, to the counter application at all. They have not engaged what we asked for in the notice of motion, but further than that, they have not engaged us on the question of scale. So it's not a question of what, of course, the question, of course, is always in the judicial exercise of their discretion by the court. In this case, a judicial exercise of their discretion we are submitting would be for the court to say there was notice to the President that the cost that would be asked for would be on the higher scale. And they have not opposed that prayer for costs on that scale. And we therefore submit with great respect, my Lordships, that that is the scale unequivocally on which the court in the judicious exercise of their discretion, should order costs against the president.
Attorney and client.
On an attorney and client scale.
Okay.
Now, the further point, my Lord, is captured, to use a no pun intended, in the preliminary point which the first intervening party raises about the utilization of state attorney's offices on behalf of the first president. And that's a question that seeks to answer, firstly, the question that were posed, the questions that were posed to my learned colleague for the DA by the bench. And in the paragraphs 12, 13 to 17, the first intervening, it would be page 10, following page 2, where we had drawn the court's attention to what we were praying for. And it is important that we record that this is not something that we are asking for now.
When you say page 10, because you're using a different index, are you saying page 10 of that index or a different page 10?
It's page, in fact, it starts on page 9 of our intervention application.
The preliminary point?
The preliminary,
okay. We've got it.
Yes, and it's paragraph 12.
Paragraph 12
yes.
to 17. And His Lordships will see there that we raise the point pertinently. The intervening parties take issue with the utilization of the state attorney's offices on behalf of the second respondent. The second respondent is alleged to have acted in concert with the Gupta family in an irregular and corrupt manner in his personal capacity, and most certainly not in his official capacity as the President of South Africa. Consequently, the second respondent ought to have enlisted the services of private attorneys, as was done by the applicant. This has obvious cost implications. We raise it personally and we say on paragraph 14, there is no basis in law or fact to settle the taxpayer with the costs incurred in this application. Plainly put, the taxpayer's interests are both served by the respondent's report being released forthwith, and it cannot be said that the relief sought by the second respondent is in the public interest or ought to be funded by the taxpayer. The time has come for the second respondent to accept personal responsibility for the costs incurred in the multiplicity of actions which he is currently involved and has been for the past decade. This submission relates specifically to the current, and then it goes on to talk about other things. And therefore it says, the second respondent ought therefore to be liable for costs incurred in this matter in his personal capacity, as if he had employed private attorneys as opposed to utilizing state resources by virtue of the position that he holds as President of South Africa. In other words, my Lord, the submission here is that the President may have chosen to ride two horses, but as your Lordships know, there comes a time when the bench or the courts will say, in corporate law, that we must pierce this corporate veil. And I think this is the time for this court to say, yeah, we see that the President may well be hiding behind the fact that he's President. But actually, it is clear that he is doing all these maneuvers in his personal capacity. And therefore, to the extent that he didn't oppose a challenge that the first intervening and the other parties posed captured in these paragraphs of the founding affidavit, to that extent, the President must be accepted by this court to accept that even though he would be opposing this application if he were, And in his capacity as president, what is clear is that he is serving personal interests. And to that extent, and to the extent that he has opposed, in a clear and undisguised way to serve his own personal interests, to that extent, this court should be at large to order that the cost must be paid by him in his personal capacity.
Advocate Msebenza, the president has withdrawn the application and has tendered costs. You are inviting us. Should we interpret that to be an invitation for us to go into the merits of the matter?
My Lord, he has withdrawn an application which is other than this application.
Yes.
This is a counter application where the presidency and the president himself have not offered any opposition.
Right.
And therefore, we are saying, insofar as we move for this court to give us an order in terms of this counter application, which is unopposed, then the president must be presumed to have considered that everything that we pray for is something that is not opposed by him and it.
I've been looking at, I've had sight of the paragraphs you referred to. In your notice of motion, however, you're not calling for the president to pay personally, you're just asking for attorney-client costs. In the notice.
My Lord, yes.
Here you're saying you're inviting the court to use your expression to pierce the corporate scale. Now, having regard to how your notice of motion reads, was the president ever at risk of paying costs personally? Did you put him at that risk?
Not other than to say it is a matter that the court, again in the judicial exercise of its discretion, might consider under paragraph 6 of the notice of motion further alternative relief. That is our submission as far as that goes. Especially because in the affidavit we have canvassed the issue and it remains unopposed. My Lord, again, in the judicial exercise of its discretion, I think, and what I think is what I submit, this is a matter really in relation to which this court should look back on the last 48 hours of this litigation and say to itself, the number one citizen of this country has been involved in a manifest abuse of this court process. And I can say this court in October ordered that all the parties must file heads of argument by a particular date. All the parties complied with the court order, except the president. The president did not file heads of argument in the application. And I'm tempted to say, I'm not surprised that they now are capitulating because they never apply themselves to their minds to what the court had ordered. The court had ordered heads of argument on their main application. Heads of argument on the counter application by the intervening parties. Now they come with an amended notice of motion in which they claim all manner of things, but that has been withdrawn. But to the extent that the court is aware of what they were coming with, they don't have time, they need time to do this, that, and the next thing. If they only had complied with the court order and the directives, if they spent all that time in making sure that they have answered to management work, that they have done all the things that the court has said must be done by a particular date, then we would have a sympathetic submission to make with regards to question of cost. No, they didn't do that. They had time to draft comprehensive heads of argument, time to make a comprehensive application for a postponement, which was abandoned all of a sudden. And the court must say to itself, in aid of what? In aid of what are all these maneuvers done? In fact, there was a presumptuousness on their part by filing heads only on the postponement application and not filing heads in the main application. It was a presumptuousness that was informed by its desire to be dilatory and waste this court's time. And had it not been for the firm case management of these proceedings by the court, they probably would have gone away with it. But we are here now in a situation where an application on all jurisprudence was stillborn. And I don't want to go into the merits, but in so far as I'm addressing the question of cost and why we want to persuade this court to grant costs not only on the higher scale, but to the extent that we have articulated, those costs to be borne by the president himself. We need to indicate that this was a stillborn application, both on their own notice of motion and for failing to reply to our counter application, but more so, in the failure for them to answer questions that this court would have had. Because the directives of the court were very clear. Even if it is so that you won't have time to deal with the main application as you claim, but please, can we have an answering affidavit? Could you answer Menchi Mentor? And it never happened. So we are making this submission, Lord, because we want to impress upon the court that whereas courts are totally in the discretion of the court, and the test is whether there has been a judicious exercise of their discretion by the courts, we now have indicated that opposition to this application, certainly to the counter application for which I have now moved an order, was stillborn. Now, with regard to the main application, my Lord, that also has been withdrawn. And your lordships have read all our heads of argument. And again, to the extent that we seek to persuade their lordships that this is not an application that should have been brought in the first place. We ought to say, in dealing with the merits of the application, that this court was being accosted to endorse something which the statute and the Constitution enjoined this court to do. The Constitution in Section 1 talks about our democracy being a multi-party democracy, founded on the foundational values, one of which is transparency. The Constitution in Section 7 binds the courts to preserve, to protect entrenched rights in Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights. And Section 32 is one such right, the right to know. Now, you are being asked by the president, the #1 citizen in the country, the one who signed the Public Protector Act into existence, the one who is enjoined by the presidency, by the Constitution, to protect all entrenched rights in the Constitution and any other rights we will submit. Now you are being asked not to implement a constitutional imperative and a legislative enactment. Now, when you take into account, therefore, all of these things, you should be persuaded to say, having gone through 2 weeks of reading papers, most of which were skirmishes on whether or not we should be postponing these proceedings or not, when the one issue, the only issue that was before his lordships, was whether or not you should comply with an enactment of Parliament which was signed by the President and with the injunctions of the Constitution. Then you must say, when after it all, when we had even prepared ourselves to hear what the arguments are going to be, when we had even considered the jurisprudence about whether a cry for failure to give a person procedural rights can in and of itself trump the exercise or the implementation of a legislative and a constitutional imperative. Constitution from Ode Kral and all the other cases that have been quoted by all the opposition lawyers in their heads of argument should have informed the President that this is a stillborn. It can't be won on any terms. On that basis, my Lord, I think we have traversed enough of the merits to inform your Lordship's decision as to whether costs should be granted, not only on the high scale, but to the extent that we have indicated, Lordship, also against the President in his personal capacity.
Thank you, Excellency.
Those are submissions.
Thank you. Advocate Mpofu, are you going to advance submissions on the issue of costs?
Yes, I will.
And can I request that you don't traverse ground that has already been traversed?
Request accepted. JP. If you may allow me just to preface the extent to which I...
Just before you continue, I see the continued use of flash photography here. It's not good for the eyes. We're trying to read things here.
But anyway, we have stopped it.
No, it happened, no.
But besides whether it's good for the eyes or not, there's been an injunction.
I hope it doesn't happen again.
As the court pleases, my lord, if I may, I'm really doing three things. One is to on behalf of COPE and the UDM, to move for the counter application in terms of that our prayer 3 as amended. In other words, the amendment is simply to remove any reference to dates, because the word forthwith is already there. Then, my lord, and that's obviously on the basis that that application is unopposed by any party. So put that aside. Then on the question of costs, my lord, I will associate myself with what my learned colleague, Mr. Ntsabeza, has said. In other words, I'm moving for both the question of scale and the question of whether the costs should attach personally to the person of the president.
Yes.
On the question of the, well, let me just preface my remarks by saying, on both of those legs, I have to emphasize that these are unopposed applications, both on the question of the scale and on the question of the of the personal attachments of the costs. And to that extent, I would assume, subject to guidance from the bench, that the question of the scale of the costs, which was prayed for, and there's no doubt about that, notice was given and it still remains unopposed, is a matter that I don't need to spend a lot of time on, to the extent that it's not opposed. Obviously, I still have a duty to guide the court because the court has a residual discretion.
But you shouldn't assume that we have made any decision at this stage.
Without assuming anything. In fact, the reason why I'm doing this is try and save time, because in the submissions that I'm going to make in regard to the personal attachment of the costs, it will ipso facto deal with the question of the scale of costs. The conduct, the usual standard, which is the conduct and behavior of the litigant, except for the additional leg that we are introducing now. My Lord, yes. I would like to start by reading out an extract in the case of Solidarity and Others versus SABC 2016 bracket 6 SACC SA 73, sorry, CC LC in the Labour Court, 2016 bracket 6 SA 73 bracket LC, paras 77 to 78. And it deals with the basis upon which this submission is going to be made, but also somewhere there is foreshadowed the question that the Deputy Charge President Muchapelo correctly asked regarding the prayers. Obviously deals with the effects of that case. It was about an MEC. However, that does not excuse their behavior. It says, okay, let me read it all. In the present case, the best that can be said for the MEC and head department is that their conduct, although veering towards thwarting the relief sought by the board, cannot conclusively be said to constitute contempt of court. However, that does not excuse their behavior. The MEC, in her responses to the opposition by the board, appeared indignant and played the victim. She adopted this attitude while acting in flagrant disregard of constitutional norms. She attempted to turn turpitude into rectitude. The special cost order, namely on the attorney and client scale sought by the board and Mafujane, is justified. However, it is the taxpayer who ultimately will meet those costs. It is time for courts to seriously consider holding officials who behave in the high-handed manner described above personally liable for costs incurred. This might have a sobering effect on truant public office bearers. Regrettably, in the present case, it was not prayed for and thus not addressed. That's the Deputy Charge President's point. At paragraph 78, it says, I am satisfied that there is no question that the applicants should not bear the cost of bringing this application, including the cost of two counsel. I'm also concerned that the dismissals were authorized and reckless. Anyway, it deals with the effects of that case. Paragraph 78 is not directly applicable. I'd like us to put an imaginary finger on that proposition. And maybe I should, before I do that, address the point raised by the Deputy Charge President. With the greatest respect, Deputy Charge President and the court, I would submit that although technically speaking, the prayer that the Deputy Charge President points to does not deal with this question of personal attachment and is confined to the question of scale. which I have to concede because that's what it is in black and white, that this case is distinguishable on that aspect from the gambling board case for the following reasons. One, and the most important of those reasons, is that the paragraphs, is that the first, second to the third intervening parties foreshadowed and notified the president. Might not have been in the conventional manner, but if we think about, we can't elevate form over substance, as it were. The point of the matter is that they were made aware that this point is going to be raised. And it did more than simply just putting it in the prayer. We went on for 5 or 6 paragraphs. No, not yet. And in greater detail, once again, I don't want to repeat what my learned colleague has read, but in detail we say, and that comes to the point that the Judge President has raised, we say, although at face value, and again we have to concede that, at face value, what you have here is the president of a country, qua president, being accused of doing certain things in respect of that office specifically. But if we just scratch the surface with the greatest respect, it will become clear that all the activities that are in all the papers that are here really deal with the personal interests and personal benefits of the president. They deal with serious allegations of corruption and nepotism, of ensuring that the financial interests, his personal financial interests, we know the allegations about the involvement of his son and all that. Those cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, be ascribable to the office of the president per se. None of the powers that are ascribed to the president in the Constitution include putting your son with some business interest and as a proxy for your own business interest. None. So what we really have here, and if I may make this example, for example, it's relevant just to the point I'm making. Let's take Minister Zwane's issues, Minister Van Rooyen's issues that we debated yesterday. There's the talk of the so-called frequent visits. Those frequent visits, on all accounts, happened before he was appointed as minister. So can he now come here and say, well, I'm now a minister, therefore I can use the state attorney, even though those activities were obviously committed in his personal capacity as a private citizen? He can't.
It's an unfortunate comparison.
Well,
because the kind of order you're seeking against president, you didn't seek against Mr. Van Rooyen.
Well, for one reason and one reason only. And in fact, that is explained very clearly in...
I'm told that he came here in personal capacity and bore his own cost.
And we actually say so in the affidavit.
So you can disregard that.
Yes. In the... as a court business, my lord. In the affidavit, well, it's not even that simple. Your lordship might be correct. In the affidavit, we said the president should have used private attorneys just like Mr. Van Rooyen. In other words, we used Mr. Van Rooyen as a shining example of what we were saying should be done. And we were praising him. Well, I'm sorry, we have to withdraw that praise.
Because we need it now for your argument.
No, because what happened is that yesterday we received the application of Minister Zwane. And it turns out that Minister Zwane is also using the same attorneys as Minister Van Rooyen. So it might not be as praiseworthy, that conduct, as we thought it was. But let's put that aside. The issue is simple here. When we were making that comparison, we were saying, well, we thought at least Minister Van Rooyen must have realized that these kinds of allegations cannot be ascribed to the ministerial office and therefore went to private attorneys. And we're saying the president should have done exactly the same. Now, the issue is quite simply this. If these activities can be attributed to the office of the president correctly defined, then obviously he's entitled to be represented by the state attorney. More so, again, a point in his favor. When the complaint was laid, and even when the letters were written by the public protector, they were addressed to him in his official capacity. We concede all that. However, as my learned colleague Mr. Ntsabeza said, we propose that in line with the warning that was given in the gambling board case, the time has come for the court to scratch the surface and not just look at what is apparently in front of us.
The gambling board case, the gambling board case, that's the one you read.
That's what I read.
And the point made there was that that relief was not sought. Had it been sought, it would have been granted.
No, as I said, Judge President, both the concerns of that he came as president, which was raised by yourself, and the concern raised by the Deputy Judge President that it was not in the prayer, I'm going to address. I was just starting with your...
Now, I wanted to check whether you have other authority that is in point, that leads us where you want us to go.
Well, then maybe let me move to that point quickly. The point I'm making is simply this, Honorable Judge President, that case is distinguishable on the point. And my argument is simply the question of substance over form. I'm saying in this case, notification, because the reason of putting something in a prayer is notification of the other party, so that, as the Deputy Judge President was saying, they must know that they are at risk of something. There's no debate about that. I'm saying that that has happened in substance here, because we have gone even more than just putting a prayer. We've gone to town to tabulate in detail why it is that the cost should attach personnel. But what is more is that those paragraphs that deal with in detail with why the cost should be attached personally have not been responded to by the president. So no, we did more than just putting it in a prayer. We elaborated on it. All that would have done is, if the president thought this is nonsense and I don't understand this, is to say, no, you're making a mistake. Blah, 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 here for this and that. He doesn't do that. So the notification plus elaboration remains unchallenged. And it can only be unchallenged because he must know. Well, the general rule is that if you don't dispute allegations, then you admit them. Then he must be admitting that he was acting for his own nefarious personal purposes. And even just at the level of common sense, with the greatest respect, let's now look at what the conduct for both points. And before we look at the conduct, we must look at the fact that this president in particular has been warned about this. This behavior of frustrating the work of the public protector is not something that has started with this matter. And that is why that expression that the time might well have come for the courts to say something about this. And our clients feel very, very strongly that that time is now. This is what was said in the case of economic freedom fighters versus the Speaker of the National Assembly and others, which is colloquially known as the Gandla case. At paragraph 54, the execution of her investigative, reporting, underline, or remedial powers, rather in the execution of her investigative, reporting, or remedial powers, she the public protector, is not to be inhibited, undermined, or sabotaged. And I jump one sentence.
Why do you like jumping sentences? We want to hear the whole.
I can read the irrelevant stuff as well. Okay.
No, look, if it's a
I'll read it. Yeah.
Yes.
I jumped the sentence obviously because it pertains to the facts of that case, but I'll read it if the court insists. I'll read the whole thing. When all other essential requirements for the proper exercise of her power are met, she is also to take appropriate remedial action, which is obviously relevant here. Our constitutional democracy can only be truly strengthened when there is zero tolerance for the culture of impunity. The prospects of good governance are duly enhanced by enforced accountability, the observance of the rule of law, the respect of every aspect of our Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic are here. Within the context of breathing life into the remedial powers of the public protector, she must have the resources and capacities necessary to effectively execute her mandate so that she can indeed strengthen our constitutional democracy. Paragraph 55. Her investigative powers are not supposed to bow down to anybody, not even at the door of the highest chambers of raw state power. The predicament, though, is that mere allegation and investigation of improper or corrupt conduct against all, especially powerful public office bearers, are generally bound to attract a very unfriendly response. An unfavorable finding of unethical or corrupt conduct coupled with the remedial action will probably be strongly resisted in an attempt to repair or soften the inescapable reputational damage. It is unlikely that unpleasant findings and a biting remedial action would be really welcomed by those investigated. Now, the relevance of this is actually very profound because this case, after all, is about what Chief Justice Mogoeng was talking about, which is attempt to repair or soften the inescapable reputational damage. In other words, this whole case is about saying, look, if the report is released, I might suffer some reputational damage. And this is what was foreshadowed here. The law cannot be used to shield the reputational damages of corrupt people. So the point I'm simply making is this. Let's take this as it was the first warning in the Nkandla case of the kind of behavior. And what have we seen here? We have seen an even more aggravated form of abuse of this court. We are all sitting here, full bench, and so many counsel, 2 days of the court's time. For what? We were told on the 24th of October, at the latest, all the political parties here sent a letter to the president. And we said, in the light of your concession contained in paragraph 81 of your answering affidavit, that if the report is final, then it must be released. That's what he said. We said, in the light of this, please withdraw the case before we even do our replying affidavits, so that we don't incur any more costs, so that this court does not constitute the full bench or all sorts of other arrangements. Please, this is the 24th, ignored. On the 25th, the following day, we did the replying affidavit in which we repeated, and so did the DA, by the way, we repeated, the DA even went more elaborately to say there's no longer any live dispute. And we said, paragraph 81, you concede that if the report is final, and the public protector has now explained that it is final, then that's the end of this case. No, nothing. Only on Saturday, the 29th, 6 days later, we get what, at least in my estimation, with the greatest respect, amounts to the greatest insult to this court and to the collective intelligence of the South African people. The president says on the Saturday, no. that paragraph 81, it was a typing error. What actually wanted to say was, if the report is final, it should not be released. Now that, with the greatest respect, is a criminal offense. It's perjury, it's a lie, it cannot be sustained. The DA and ourselves in our affidavits over the weekend in response to the application for postponement have elaborated on that. It's impossible that that was a typing error for two reasons. One, because if it was a typing error, when we raised it on the Monday, the 24th, and said the case is over, they would have said, oh, it's the typing error. No, they don't do that. But more importantly, if you read, they forgot, this is what happens when you commit a criminal offense. You forget sometimes to cover the tracks. They forgot that there are other paragraphs in that very same affidavit. Paragraph 82 says that, however, in that event, the president will have recourse to review proceedings. I'm paraphrasing. In a separate paragraph, they say the irreparable harm will obviously not accrue. I think it's paragraph 95. Will not accrue if the report is final, as it looks like. They forgot to correct that one. And then in paragraph 97, then they say we accept that if the public protector was functus officio, then the report must be released. So it's nothing but a blatant lie, deliberately made under oath to pull the proverbial wool over the eyes of this court, and this being done under oath by no less than the president of a country, with the greatest respect, is something that deserves the judicial frown of the sternest order. And we say with the greatest respect, my lord, that kind of behavior, and I'm just picking one really, there's a litany of including the fact that we're told only this morning that the matter has been withdrawn, but I won't go there. There's a litany of that kind of conduct, but I'm simply singling out this one because it amounts to criminal behavior and impeachable behavior. Now, if I'm correct then that the president, at least it is arguable that some of these activities that he performed could not have conceivably been performed in his capacity as the president, but in his personal financial capacity or whatever else. If I'm also correct that the president has been notified sufficiently of the risk of a court order that attaches to him personally. If I'm also correct, 3, that the behavior is of such a serious and egregious manner and contemptible manner that the court should visit it with the requisite amounts of opprobrium. Then the only question that remains is whether this is not one of those cases that was being foreshadowed in the gambling board case. And if I'm correct, lastly, that the warning was sounded by no less than the Chief Justice about trying to frustrate and sabotage the actions of the public protector, with all the gymnastics that we've seen here of ministers coming and going and all sorts of things. With the greatest respect, my lords, I would implore this court to send a message out there before it is too late. I would implore, I'm sorry, okay.
That whispering is just to check how long you still be. This is not an attempt to curtail you, just for us to manage our timetable.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do realize that it's almost tea time. I'm not going to be much longer.
It's almost tea time, but if it meant that you had a few minutes to finish, we don't want a requirement such as that to do that. But if you're going to be long, it might not help to give you 2 minutes when you actually need 20.
Let's go. If the court can just indulge me with 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Without
with that information at hand, we will confer again.
Oh yes.
We're going to adjourn.
If I may indicate, my lords, that that's probably the right thing to do, because there's still counsel for Ms. Mentor, who wants a couple of minutes as well.
We realize that other people are going to argue. Thank you.
And we hope that no one will follow your example at overusing the airtime available. Thank you. Court adjourned.
All right.
Well, there you have it. This is the court case everybody was waiting for. Of course, the DA as well as the EFF, startled by the revelation that the president has withdrawn the application. But now they're arguing about the cost that must be borne by the president and not by the country itself, or the economy for that matter. The arguments relate to cost. There's also the indication from the EFF that a president is liable for cost in his personal capacity. We'll bring you some more of that after the tea break. But let's now go live to Pretoria, where Save South Africa has got their gathering going. Let's find out what's going on there.
To Luthuli House, I won't say petitioned, but who asked for a meeting to engage. And a reply came saying, "Who are you?" Basically meaning, what standing do you have in the ANC? Among those people that were asked are Albertina Luthuli, who is one of the over 100 people who signed the letter that went to Luthuli House. Comrade Kathada, Comrade Mlangeni, Comrade Tandi Lujabe. I mean, who dares ask those people who they are? This was a diversionary question, which unfortunately I have to say did almost divert us from our purpose, because there was an attempt to try and say, oh, maybe all this, and in the end, it was decided that we are staunch, loyal, faithful, committed, devoted, dedicated, dependable, reliable, steadfast, unswerving, unwavering, unhesitating, unfaltering supporters of our Constitution. As are all of you. This Constitution, comrades, that is imbued not only with the spirit of Oliver Tambo, but that of Helen Joseph, that of Lillian Ngoyi, that of Francis Bard, Albertina Sisulu, Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, that is imbued with their principles, guided by their values, and that has brought us where we are today. We want to defend, protect, and uphold that Constitution. Some may think they can toss it aside like a piece of paper. We don't. Comrades, we stand for our democracy. It is not elastic, as some would make us believe, that democracy is an elastic concept. It is not. Because you see, an elastic has a tendency to snap. And when it snaps, pens may fall, things may fall. Democracy is not elastic. It is steadfast. It represents all of us. We all must abide by it. Finally, but not least, we want, comrades, to reclaim the glory days, the integrity, the honesty, the steadfastness, the leadership of our movement. We are not complaining, we are not whining, we are doing it because we can. So comrades, we are here to claim our stake in this second movement to reclaim our country, our land, and our Constitution. Amandla.
Thank you, Comrade Sheila. Apologies, Comrade Max. I had not seen you here, but welcome. But it's important not just because Comrade Max is a member of the NEC, but he's also a former Speaker of the National Assembly, and that is another one of those institutions that we need to safeguard and protect. Comrades and friends, we're almost at the end now, and it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome our next keynote speaker for today. He is the convener of the Save South Africa campaign. He is the chairperson of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. He is the chair of the board of Anglo Gold Ashanti.
Well, that was coming to you live from the St. Albans Cathedral in the capital, the Save South Africa gathering, as you see. But let's just recap this morning. It's been a very busy morning, yeah, in South Africa, well, in the South African political sphere, if one can call it that. To recap, President Jacob Zuma has withdrawn his application to interdict the release of the Public Protector's report on so-called state capture with immediate effect. His legal team had been expected to argue in the High Court in Pretoria that his procedural rights were undermined during the compilation of this report. They say he wasn't afforded sufficient time to answer questions on his relationship with the Gupta family.
My instructions are to withdraw the application and to tender costs. My instructions are further not to oppose any costs on the scale, the scale of the costs, and we abide the decision of this Honourable Court in relation to those costs.
Your instructions are to withdraw the application in its entirety. Your instructions are to tender costs and to... Yeah.
My instructions are, I have no instructions to argue on costs.
To argue costs, okay.
Yes.
But you tender in cost in line with your withdrawal?
In light of the withdrawal, yes.
Okay.
That it would be appropriate for the Public Protector to be included in the whole of the costs order, as well as that up until the date on which she withdrew her opposition.
The President is asserting a personal interest and a personal right and is using the office of the President to do so, and is using the State Attorney to advance that interest. And to withdraw the application without any consequence for the President personally, we submit would not be appropriate, and our submission before the court is merely that the state coffers should not again be mulcted for private interests.
We are asking the release of the report forthwith, in which event we put a full stop there, and you are asking for the grant of this court's honorable order in terms of paragraph 3 as amended.
This behavior of frustrating the work of the public protector is not something that has started with this matter. And that is why that expression that the time might well have come for the courts to say something about this. And our clients feel very, very strongly that that time is now.
Well, there you have it. The arguments in relation to the cost order. They also want the political parties also want the public protector to be included in that cost order, and the president must pay it himself. Let's now go back to Save South Africa, just having the gathering.
Or live with the consequences of losing everything that you've ever earned. And so I would like to welcome you to this, the first ever of our People's Assembly Against State Capture. This is indeed a truly historic occasion, for we, the people, stand united in diversity that defines our great nation to say, the rich inheritance of our democratic country is not for sale, and neither will we allow it to be outsourced to people I see as the latter-day mafia-style crooks and thieves, no matter how friendly they are with the president of our country. Compatriots, we stand here only a few kilometers from Freedom Park, a memorial to some of many who sacrificed their lives to set us free. Only a few meters away from Pretoria Central, where Solomon Mahlangu, like many of his comrades, was hanged for daring to fight for our self-determination against the tyranny of apartheid. Less than a 10-minute drive from here, on the grounds of Union Building, that great leader of our country, Nelson Mandela, proclaimed us a free nation a little over 22 years ago. And 20 years ago, yet another of those of our great leaders, on the adoption of our constitution, Thabo Mbeki delivered his seminal "I'm an African" address. In it, he proclaimed South Africa united in diversity. He assured its people of their inalienable right to determine the affairs of this great nation. And on this basis, all of us here, black and white, men and women, have a right to claim to being Africans. We are all Africans. Let no one say to you that because you're white you don't belong. You do. You are South African. We are proud of you. And together we share our deep love for our country. And that is why we're here. We are here to demand our right to be governed only and only by those leaders that we elected. Mr. President, hear us and hear us very clearly. When you outsource any element of that sacred public duty to govern and you pass it on to an unelected clique for financial gain, then you must know that you have sold us out as a nation. We are here to say that you must know that you have done nothing less than mortgage our hard-won right to self-determination. We are here to say that we are no longer prepared to tolerate a handful of people manipulating the organs of state to steal our right of freedom of expression, or so that they can share the spoils with their cronies and their families. Unlike you, Mr. President, we are not comfortable with the capture of our state. And this is why we must echo the words of our beloved Chief Albert Luthuli and ask that, Mr. President, you please let our people go and enjoy their freedom. Compatriots, you need fear no longer. Together we're strong and formidable enough to defeat those forces of state capture and corruption. As you sit in this People's Assembly against state capture, I urge you to look around you. You are not alone in your outrage or in feeling enough is enough. Alongside you are the unemployed, are professionals, activists, public servants, students and academics. There are labor and business leaders, struggle stalwarts, and a wide array of faith organizations, political party representatives, and many others. And the list continues. Thousands of ordinary South Africans are joining this protest across the country today as part of this great campaign. Each of you have come together with one purpose and one purpose alone: to rescue the state from the sovereign piracy that we witness daily. You have come here to save South Africa, and we salute and commend you all for doing so. But equally, I ask you, steel yourselves, harden yourselves for this campaign. This journey is likely to be long and tough. We have started this journey, and we know there is no going back. On Monday, we all heard Sean Abrams, the new comedian on our land. We heard him say what any thinking South African has known all along, which is that the case against Honorable Minister Pravin Gordhan, and I'm happy to say Honorable Minister, not because it's his title, but because his end is honor. He said that the case against him, Opa Magashule and Ivan Pillay, was a sham. Through the course of that rambling press conference, our highest ranked prosecutor made clear that the NPA, with help of other state organs, did its level best to sabotage the career of 3 loyal public servants who have devoted their lives to serving the people of this country. It may be that the crusade to discredit our finance minister was a prelude to remove him. But we must ask the question, why? Perhaps so that they could open the door of our treasury and get their hands on South Africa's money. Fellow South Africans, when they achieve that ultimate goal of state capture, you must know it is game over for our country. I'm inviting you to have a sense of urgency. But we also saw something else at that shameful NPA press conference. We saw them, the forces that would drive our country to bankruptcy, backing down. They back down because they thrive on apathy. And this time, we did not give them that luxury. This time, we didn't give them the space and cover or darkness that they normally rely on to do their dirty work. This time, we, all of us here, you and you there and you, all of us, all of you, and millions more besides you, stood up. We all stood up. The time has come that we all come together and make our voices heard. This time, civil society, business, political parties, and private citizens stood up and said, no more and no more and no more. And your collective voice was simply too big for anyone to ignore. That, friends, is the immense power that we all possess. Amandla! All power! We must reclaim, as we say, that all power is ours. But they will be back to try this again. Make no mistake. They are greedy, they are powerful, they are motivated, and they are incredibly well resourced. So whilst we don't dare rest on our laurels for a second, we should recognize that we've achieved something real and great. We must realize that we are a powerful force, and we should realize that the decision to drop those bogus charges was not the end of our struggle, but only the beginning of it. And as the fight against pillage and theft of our country's resources gains momentum, the people will become stronger and stronger. That you can count on. And as we look back at the wreckage that Sean Abrams and his cohorts have left behind, what is very clear to all of us is that the wrong people were being harassed by the NPA. The people who should be on trial are the kingpins of state capture, the champions of corruption, the hoodlums who conspire in Saxonwell, Dubai, Russia and other places to plot how to capture the treasury, capture the state, and how they can make more and more money out of looting our national purse. Those are the ones who should be on the dock. Their project and what they are doing is subverting the democratic state. They are undermining our constitution and undermining our sovereignty as a nation. They are the real crooks, and they are the ones who should indeed be on the dock. We all know those people. There's more than enough information in the public domain already. Week after week, we saw new details of their handiwork, their grubby little fingers everywhere. It is clear from the little we know that there is more than enough information in the public protector's reports on state capture to indicate who the architects of state capture are, who the handlers are, and who is being handled. We read how the dirty but very lucrative work of state capture has allegedly been facilitated by certain people at places such as Trillion Capital, Eskom, Transnet, and Dinel, among others. We see how friends are allowed to run riot at the South African Airways, friends and girlfriends perhaps, and SABC with no threat of sanction.
That was a member of Save South Africa, Sipho Pichana, talking there. Let's now go back to where President Jacob Zuma has withdrawn his application to interdict the release of the Public Protector's report on the so-called state capture with immediate effect. And now they're arguing about cost. Let's go back to court.
The cost we're talking about is cost in this action.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm not saying you must pay 500 billion. I'm saying the cost to the country.
The cost of this case?
Yes. In other words, the conduct. Oh, no, I'm talking about the conduct. The entire conduct around the Guptarization of South Africa.
Yeah, but our jurisdiction is to consider and decide the cost of this case.
Yes, but in considering and deciding the cost of this case, yes, you have to look at the conduct of the litigant that we're talking about. Yes.
Their conduct in the case.
Yes, and in the case, what is the case about? The case is about allegations of abdication of power, yes, and appointment of ministers, yes, such as happened in Nenegate. Yes. So that's the context. In other words, everything that was done in the context of this case, to that extent, then becomes relevant. And the point I'm making is...
I am restraining myself, but I think as counsel, you should know what troubles me so that you focus on what I should decide on.
Yes.
I suspect that when you refer to Nenegate, you refer to what happened in December last year.
That's correct.
Now, while the judiciary has its function to do, we only judge what comes before us.
Yes.
We cannot judge that which did not come again before us. And today what has been brought to us is an application to compel the public protector or to direct it to release the report, and the other one was to interdict. That is what we should really deal with. And the costs must be the costs which arises from the way the case was conducted.
Yes.
Not before that.
Well, if the court will then bear with me, so that I can indicate where I am in the papers. If your Lordship goes to, if we confine ourselves to what is in the papers, to page 21 of the bundle, of our bundle. Your Lordship will see that the point I'm making is actually part of the papers. Paragraph 46. Yes. And I'll read it out. The conduct that is the subject of the first respondent's report, that's the public protector, the one in this case, is of both international and national concern. It caused a massive devaluation of our local currency and caused a loss of more than 500 billion rand on the value of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and when the second respondent appointed the applicant as the Minister of Finance for 4 days, that minister being Minister van Rooyen. So the issue I'm raising is not, I'm not asking the court to take judicial notice or anything like that. It's in the papers, and it has not been refuted. As the court pleases me. Now, the other issue which is also raised in the papers is the relationship of this pattern of behavior, but I've made that point in relation to the Nkandla issue when I said that was the first warning. All we want to raise now, my Lord, is the following. In closing.
In the Nkandla matter, I wasn't involved. We've read it. There was an issue of the upgrading or improvements benefiting the president personally. Was there an order sought for him to pay the costs of that litigation personally?
No, there wasn't. I wasn't the case.
That's all I want to hear.
No, it wasn't. The personal cost in that case attached to what Your Lordship has just called the so-called upgrades. Fortunately, I wasn't in that matter. Yes. But the point we're making is that if you take that one as the first warning, this is the one that needs to...
Okay, sorry, I disturbed you. You were concluding.
Yes. I was saying, my Lord, this debate about costs is for our clients a very, very serious matter, and one that we would like the court to pronounce upon. Accordingly, we would like to propose the following. If, and it's a big if the court, on the point that was raised by the DJP, is not convinced that sufficient notice has been given, then the court can do what was done in the SABC case that I read out, which was to then ask that litigant to show cause, to come back and show cause why the cost should not be personally attached to them. So that is if the court still feels that sufficient notice was not given. But the rider to that is that we would like to decouple that issue from the issue of the report. In other words, it would be competent for this honorable court to say, we grant the order to release the report forthwith, which means immediately. It must be released, and then make an order similar to the order that was in the SABC case in relation to the notice, so that the person or persons involved could maybe show cause. That was an elegant solution which was adopted in the SABC case.
You mean in relation to costs?
Yes, in relation to personal costs. Yes. Remember, DJP, that your point was raised there that it had not been raised in the prayer. And for that reason, the person was then given a time to come back and show the court. But that did not stop the granting of the rest of the relief that was sought. So that could be a way out if the issue of notice is still of concern to the court. If not, if my submissions that the notice was in effect sufficiently given, then we would submit that the way would be open for the court to grant the order on the punitive scale and to attach personally to the recalcitrant litigant, as the court pleases.
Thank you, Advocate. Advocate Lewis?
My Lords, I'll be very brief on the issue of costs.
We have, of course, taken note of the fact that the state has tended to pay the costs of all the respondents, which of course includes Ms. Mentor as a party who was granted leave to intervene. My Lord, as to the issue of whether the President should be ordered to pay the costs in his personal capacity and on a punitive scale, if this was simply an issue that was to be addressed at the level of law, I would be aligning myself entirely with the submissions that have been made on behalf of my learned friends, particularly in relation to the fact that the President has sought to protect a personal right here by using state resources. And I would have relied, my Lords, on his allegation in response to our application to intervene at paragraph 26 of his answering affidavit, in which he stated that the relief is aimed at ensuring that the public protector gives effect to my right to just administrative action. My Lords, you'll also recall the submission that was made yesterday on behalf of the President, that this issue pertained only to the President's procedural rights and had nothing to do, in the President's view, with the public interest. And so, my Lords, if the issue was to be dealt with at that level only, I would be aligning myself and asking for the same relief that my learned friends have requested. However, we did not, in our notice of motion or our affidavits, give any intention, give any indication of an intention to apply for costs on that scale. And so, on that basis, I don't think that it would be appropriate to argue for that relief now.
Thank you very much. Advocate Lewis.
My Lords, no submissions, just two references, if your Lordships will permit me.
Yes.
It's where the DA gave notice to the President of personal cost orders. The first is in the DA's application for intervention. It's in the letter that starts at page 98, where an offer was made to the President at that stage to agree to withdraw the application by consent, to authorize the report to be released with no costs. And at page 99, it is stated at paragraph 6, if your client refuses to consent to the order or a reasonable variation, our client will seek a punitive costs award against your client in his personal capacity. That's in the application for intervention. And then also, my Lords, in the application for postponement and the notice of amendment, in the final paragraphs that are found in that application on page 116 to 117, the DA indicates that it would seek, in addition to the release of the report, an order that the President be pay the DA's costs on an attorney and client scale in his personal capacity, and also that the President be ordered to pay his own counsel's fees in his personal capacity. Those are the two references I just wish to bring to the Court's attention.
We're still sticking to our Thank you very much for all those submissions. Because Council are on brief for the day, we thought we could give them work to do. And that work is to give us a draft order that deals with the withdrawal as well as the uncontested parts, that is the counter applications and the order sought there. Leave out the issue of what was argued now, the personal liability of the costs.
Just for clarification, my Lord, the uncontested parts, except for the issue that the court might consider separately.
That's why we want to adjourn and consider our thinking.
Consider the submissions.
Whilst you prepare the draft order about the other parts.
Uncontested parts. As a court pleases.
My Lord, may I just rise on the question of costs against the President? Somebody has emailed to me or has sent to me a reference, George MAR, MARR, versus MEC for Health Eastern Cape and one other. Case number 3908/2005. It's a judgment of the South Eastern Cape Local Division. I have not seen the case, but I am told it would be a matter that addresses the whole question of costs against the president.
You are being fortified while you are in the battle.
Indeed.
Okay. Thank you very
As a
much.
court, please.
So please prepare the draft, give it to us whilst we consider our view to the personal liability of the president regarding costs. Thank you very much. I'll take this. Will you bring my bundle, please? It's this one, not this one or that one. Thank you.
We have had enough. And we're all saying to you that we're no longer